Sonny, let's just go back. Saw the movie air. I would recommend it to anybody and everybody. One of the best sports movies I've ever seen. We, of course, here in Boston have the Matt Damon and the Ben Affleck, contact and connection. How did you first hear of this movie being made, and what was your interest? What did you say about it when it was first an idea?
I had no idea the movie was being made then. They did it. The young man who worked with Mandalay Bay knew me vicariously he worked as a student, and his first job there was to edit Soul Man. That was a documentary they did about me, the same company, and he had to get all the pieces, and you guys know how that works, and put them together for whatever, because it took 6 years for Soul Man. Then he saw a 3.5-hour interview I did for The Last Dance that they never used in The Last Dance, the famous Last Dance. And which I didn't think they'd ever use anyway. But anyway, so he watched all that, and he went away, and he was 22 when he started. At the year 28, he's got his script. He had an idea about a script. I didn't know. I didn't even know the kid, obviously, and I didn't know anyone at their, at Mandalay. I knew John Weinbach. They invited me down to meet them. Peter Guber, the owner of Mandalay, but also 25% of the Golden State Warriors, 25% of the Dodgers. He's huge in Hollywood. Out of the clear blue sky, John Weinbach calls me, come on down, we're talking about a project. I go down, it was Super Bowl Monday, the day after the Super Bowl, when it was in Los Angeles. So that's the first I heard of this movie. And Peter has about 15 people from their company. They had already started the movie. They were getting ready to film. And they invited me down, and as you know, I'm a public figure. They could have done anything as they can in movies. Am I not right? I mean, that's a controversial day, and and some things are right, and some things aren't, and some things are funny and aren't. So anyway, he invites me down there, and was telling me about it. He gave us his little opening speech. I see all the other people, and he said, "We want you involved. We want you involved as a consultant." Well, my wife and I are certainly listening and whatever it is. And he said, you're going to have nothing to do with the script. You're going to have nothing to do with the players, the actors. But we respect what you've done, and that this story pretty well. So we made an agreement for Pam and me, to be a consultant on the movie. Now I'm in. Okay. I hadn't met anybody. The young writer there that I told you, Alex Conavoy, I never knew who he was. So right after we were going to do it, Matt and Ben had not agreed yet. They were going to agree pretty soon. So once they agreed, the mystery of who was going to be who, bought in. Matt calls me on the phone, and we do a 1 hour and 30-minute, like we're doing today, right? The Zoom. And there's Matt Damon on the other end. And to answer your question, to go right to Boston, so Matt sort of breaks it beautifully. He said, Sonny, I want to tell you, I know about you, whatever. He said, I grew up 5.5 blocks away from Patrick Ewing. And I went to Ridge Latin High School. Obviously, he's 10 years younger. And Ben and I are the greatest Celtic fans in the world. But I was a college fan of the Hoyas. That's how so Matt it was like he wrote a script, right? But it was true. And so he wrote this script. So we talked for an hour and a half that day, and he broke down all the questions that he had prepared, relating to what he knew the scenes were going to be. And we just hit it off.
Well, you were so passionate, Sonny, about signing Michael Jordan. What is your recollection of signing Michael, and why, as people will see in the movie, why were you so adamant about Michael Jordan?
Dan, it's the hardest thing in my life because it happened. I did not know Michael Jordan ever. He didn't play in my high school all-star game. Dean Smith, I never met in my life. He wore Converse, okay? All these things, he meant nothing to me until I saw the Georgetown, North Carolina game. John, as I said before, that was one of my favorite schools. Patrick, I knew all the kids on the team because most of them played again, and John and I were the best friends at that time. So when Michael Jordan hits the shot with that 18-second clock, which is embellished in my mind forever, he broke my heart. And I didn't think about him. And I don't know, 2 years had passed. I don't think I ever said his name again until we had the meeting where 5 people was invited up to Oregon, and I was one of them. I was the least likely person because I had nothing to do with pro basketball at that time. My game was putting the college shoes so the athletes could wear them, so the people will buy the shoe. The only way I could do it was pay the coaches, right? So now I had nothing. So they asked me the question. They had the whole draft list of 84 up there. Rob Strauss was running the meeting, and he asked the other 4 people, again, fortuitous. I was the last one, the least likely. And the other guys, we had $500,000 as the world knows to spend. And they all wanted 2 or more, 2 or 3. They wanted to spread the money out. That's a fact. That happened. And that's why I think this story is more interesting and it elevates me to a different level unconsciously. Because the words that come out of my mouth, I swear to God, is give it to the kid. And that's documented. And I was still thinking the kid I saw 2 years ago, because he was 18 or 19 years old and not a man now, 20 or 21. And they said, well, I said, who's the kid? And I said, Jordan, the kid from North Carolina. And that's how it started. There was a lot of argument or not argument, but disagreement because, Howard Slasher, you may remember him, was a great, football and he represented players. Somehow he worked for Nike too. I mean, he represented players and we signed some of his players, but it had nothing to do with my life. I didn't know who Howard Slasher was or nothing. They asked me a question, I gave my answer. And after all the debate, Rob and Phil say, we're going to go with you. It wasn't easy. In fact, it's a miracle. There's 1,000 to 1 shot that they even listened because those guys were more important. And Slusher said something to me was actually true. He said, what if he gets hurt? And my answer was pretty close to the memory of 40 years ago, Dan, is and Barkley was in that class, Stockton was in that class. I mean, hell, Akeem Olajuwon, it was a great class. But my words had come out for no reason because I didn't know what the hell was going to happen in the future. I said, you want somebody to carry the thing. I think this kid's the kid. There was no bias. That's what made it so beautiful. If it had been Georgetown and Patrick Ewing, you'd say, well, you like the kid, right? You didn't know him. So that changed my life, Nike's life for sure. And Michael started something that will live forever.
And Nike became Nike, right? After that?
Dan, the world knows Nike's going to be good, but in order to be good, okay, you have to win a game somewhere, right? Like New England was good, and then Belichick comes in and you won a game, right? Then he won 2 games. Well, that's what Nike did. There's no athlete in the world, I believe now, 40 years later, and 83 years old, and seeing a lot of athletes are great. No one could have done in 1984 what Jordan did. We both know that he was a great competitor. Your public all knows he didn't get along with his teammates. He fought within the team. I mean, but that's his competitive. It wasn't that he hated somebody. He just didn't like them if they weren't doing what he thought he should do, play well. And the other thing is, it's small and funny today, but he didn't give a damn between Democrats and Republicans, right? Because they all vote shoes. Michael was and is different. There's a mindset inside of him that is competitive. It's a natural born thing, I think. I don't think most of the athletes are competitive. Some aren't. But he separated the game and relationships until after the game was over. He was able to, and I saw that traveling with him. I saw that when we did other things. When he did Saturday Night Live, first athlete ever to do it in '92, Pam and I were in the booth with him. And obviously, he never did that. There never was an athlete on there. But it was another thing I'm trying to show you. He was ready. He was ready, and he never did it again. But that was a pretty damn good thing for a kid. And Saturday Night Live in the '90s, that was the big show, man. I mean, you got on that. So what I'm saying is, Michael opened the door for athletes to be involved and make lots and lots of money by shoe endorsements. Right then, before Michael, they controlled it. None of those guys, Magic and Larry and Dr. J, none of them got more than $100,000. Now, that was 1984. But why would anybody give anybody a piece of something? It was never the mindset. So Jordan created something, all this stuff about being the GOAT. I've been around a long time. I think the GOAT is every generation. I think it's impossible to compare Wilt with whoever is. I mean, it's impossible to compare Magic. So let's stop there. But what he is and what he will be remembered of when your children and my grandchildren and everybody else's children grow up, not as a great basketball player, he'll be gone. We're all gone from this earth. that shoe will never leave the line. There'll be Jordans, there'll be Air forever.
Sonny, so I also think that like people don't know about you, but you have this knack for seeing things in these types of players, right? Because Kobe Bryant, LeBron, I mean, you've kind of been on them right away, right?
I forget Tracy. Tracy didn't have a high school.
McGrady, yep.
Tracy, yeah. And you know, and I do, and it's not braggadocio. It's a fact. It's just it's something you're born with. You have, you know, I don't know. I mean, I didn't basketball. I had nothing to do with basketball. I loved baseball and football. I got a scholarship because of football. Nothing. I was the worst player on. There were like 53 kids in my class. I was the worst player on the basketball team. But in those days, you played all the sports, especially small schools in those days. You know, everyone played. It's a miracle. But the thing I can go back to, and it's logic. I was 24 years old when my friend Pat DeCesar and I started the Round Ball Classic, the Dapper Dan game. The first All-Star game in America was that 13 years ahead of the McDonald's game. So for 13 years, here's just 24. I'm picking kids to play that I never saw, and that I drive around to Ohio or Pennsylvania. But the other guys people were telling me. Then I just saw these kids. It goes beyond the first two kids that I helped recruit for Youngstown State University. Swear to God, you know, were kids when I was taking kids around before the Round Ball to the local teams. Like it was a precursor of what we're doing now, AAU, what you see. Millions of kids are playing everywhere, right? And one of the first two kids I got was a guy named David Tulliver and Freddie Red Jones from back in Pennsylvania. They're in the Hall of Fame of Youngstown State University's basketball team. I had a knack. I did. And I think even LeBron, everybody knows he's probably the greatest high school player that ever played, no question about that. But I saw him as a sophomore on a film. And from then on, I knew what my chore was. You know, Maverick and all those kids brought this film. Maverick is as old as him, as you know, and all his team. They're all young kids. He built an empire, you know. But I bet my life on, not my life, but I knew that this is what I wanted because I got $100 million supposedly offered from Adidas to give to LeBron, and they reneged. That's another story. But I am. God blessed me with a lot of things, and one of them being Pam. But my point is, I do have a knack, and I can spot talent. I couldn't coach him worth a darn, but I think I know if he can play a little bit.
Well, thank you, Sonny. I appreciate it, and I love the movie again, and congrats on all the success with it.
Bless you.